The clatter of cutlery and the murmur of polite conversation were the everyday soundtrack of Elara's life. For 3 years she'd navigated the treacherous waters of the Gilded Spoon, a restaurant where the prices were as inflated as the egos of its clientele. Each shift was a delicate dance of balancing trays, remembering obscure dietary restrictions, and enduring the casual condescension of the city's elite. Elara, with her worn apron and a smile that rarely reached her tired eyes, was a ghost in their opulent world, seen but rarely acknowledged. Her dreams, once vibrant and full of the promise of a scholarship to art school, had slowly faded, replaced by the grim reality of rent, bills, and the ever-present ache in her feet. Her family had poured everything into her artistic aspirations, sacrificing their own meager comforts to buy her art supplies, pay for extra classes, and even endure the snide remarks from relatives who saw no future in scribbling. But then came her father's debilitating accident, an unyielding medical bill that dwarfed their savings, and the immediate need for a steady income. The Gilded Spoon, ironically named for the very wealth that now eluded her, became her cage. Every brushstroke she'd once imagined painting was now replaced by the repetitive motion of wiping down tables, and the vibrant hues of her artistic vision were reduced to the bland white of starched tablecloths. Tonight the air felt particularly thick with the scent of money and entitlement. A private party was in full swing in the velvet-draped VIP section, celebrating the engagement of Victoria Sterling, the city's undisputed queen bee. Victoria was a force of nature, a hurricane of designer labels and inherited wealth. Her laugh, a high-pitched trill that grated on Elara's nerves, seemed to echo through the entire restaurant. She was a regular, known for her demanding nature and her penchant for leaving minuscule tips, often accompanied by a condescending remark about earning your keep. Elara had endured her share of Victoria's barbs, once being told her hair tie was too pedestrian for the Gilded Spoon, and another time, being chastised for not knowing the vintage of a wine Victoria had randomly pointed at on the extensive list. It was a constant battle to maintain her composure, to swallow the retort that always seemed to bubble up hot and bitter in her throat. Tonight, Victoria was radiating an almost blinding arrogance, draped in a gown that must have cost more than Elara's annual salary. Her fiancé, Julian Thorne, a man whose family owned a significant chunk of the city's financial district, was handsome in a generic, almost plastic way, his eyes rarely straying from Victoria's perfectly sculpted face. Their engagement was the talk of the town, a union of two empires, a testament to the enduring power of old money. Elara, in her quiet corner, felt a familiar pang of resentment. It wasn't envy, not exactly. It was the unfairness of it all, the sheer effortless grace with which some people moved through life, while others like her fought tooth and nail for every scrap. As Elara refilled water glasses, she noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere around Victoria's table. Victoria, normally the center of attention, was hunched over her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. Julian was engrossed in a conversation with a senator, oblivious. A flicker of suspicion stirred within Elara. Victoria was notoriously glued to her phone, but this was different. Her movements were furtive, her eyes darting around the room as if she were expecting to be caught. It was the same look Elara had seen on teenagers trying to cheat on exams, a mixture of intense focus and underlying panic. Then a small, almost imperceptible glint caught Elara's eye. Under the table, partially obscured by Victoria's voluminous gown, was a second phone, propped up against her knee. On its screen, something flashed, what looked like a series of notes or answers. Elara's stomach clenched. A wave of disbelief washed over her, quickly followed by a cold, hard certainty. Victoria Sterling, the celebrated, soon-to-be Mrs. Thorne, was cheating. But cheating at what? As if on cue, the restaurant manager, Mr. Harrison, a man whose every word was laced with the unctuous politeness of someone desperate to please his wealthy clientele, approached the table with a flourish. In his hand he held a sleek tablet. "Miss Sterling," he announced, his voice dripping with obsequiousness, "the final round of the charity trivia challenge is about to begin. As the leading donor and of course our esteemed guest of honor, you're the last participant. The stakes are high, but I have no doubt you'll ace it." Victoria straightened, a saccharine smile replacing her earlier scowl. "Oh, how exciting. I do love a good mental challenge." Her eyes, however, flickered down to the hidden phone for a split second, a movement that Elara, positioned just so, couldn't miss. The Charity Trivia Challenge. Of course. It was a well-known annual event, a frivolous but high-profile fundraiser where the city's elite competed for bragging rights and, more importantly, to be seen as intelligent and charitable. The winner often received a symbolic award and, of course, A huge swell of public adoration. A quiet anger began to simmer within Elara. This wasn't just about a trivia game. This was about principle, about fairness, about the blatant disregard for honesty that people like Victoria Sterling seemed to embody. It was about the effortless ease with which she expected to glide through life, cheating her way to success, while others struggled and played by the rules, only to be trampled underfoot. The memory of her father, pale and thin in his hospital bed, flashed before her eyes. The countless hours she'd spent studying for her own exams, the sacrifices she'd made to pursue her art, all seemed to mock her in this opulent room. The injustice of it all felt like a physical blow. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that intervening would cost her. The Gilded Spoon ran on the whims of its wealthy patrons, and Victoria Sterling was royalty. But a deeper, more primal instinct was stirring within her, a refusal to stand by and watch this blatant charade unfold. She had nothing left to lose, it seemed, except her dignity. And that, she realized, was the one thing she refused to surrender. The echo of her broken dreams, the fading colors of her art, suddenly coalesced into a desperate resolve. The first question Mr. Harrison read aloud was a complex historical query about ancient civilizations. Victoria, after a theatrical pause, answered flawlessly, her voice clear and confident. A ripple of applause went through the table. Elara's gaze remained fixed on the hidden phone, its screen now displaying another set of meticulously organized notes. The sheer audacity of it left her breathless. The second question concerned obscure scientific principles. Again Victoria delivered the correct answer with an air of effortless brilliance. Julian Thorne beamed at her, his pride evident. Elara felt a tremor of anger. She imagined the news headlines, the fawning articles about Victoria Sterling's impressive intellect, all built on a foundation of lies. It was a sickening thought. The third question was about a niche literary movement. Victoria, after a feigned moment of contemplation, offered the correct author and the key characteristics of the genre. Her performance was impeccable, almost too perfect. It was the lack of hesitation, the immediate recall, that truly betrayed her. Most people, even those well-versed in trivia, would have some slight pause, some moment of retrieval. Not Victoria. Her answers flowed like pre-programmed responses. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. She was acutely aware of the potential consequences of what she was about to do. Firing was a certainty. But standing by and allowing this mockery of integrity to continue felt like a betrayal of everything she believed in. Her father had always taught her the importance of honesty, of hard work, of earning what you achieved. Victoria Sterling represented the antithesis of those values. Her hands, usually steady, trembled as she approached the table, ostensibly to clear an empty champagne flute. As she reached for it, her eyes met Victoria's. For a fleeting second, a flicker of something akin to fear, or perhaps just annoyance, crossed Victoria's face. Elara paused, taking a deep, fortifying breath. "Excuse me, Miss Sterling," Elara said, her voice a little louder than necessary but still polite. "I believe you dropped something." Victoria looked up, her expression a mask of feigned innocence. "Oh, I don't think so." Elara's gaze dropped pointedly to the floor, directly at Victoria's feet. "Yes, I believe it's your study guide." A hush fell over the table. Heads turned. Mr. Harrison, who had been about to read the next question, froze, his tablet hovering mid-air. Victoria's face, usually so composed, flushed a furious crimson. Her eyes, usually dismissive, narrowed into slits of pure venom. "What are you talking about, you impertinent girl?" Victoria hissed, her voice low and dangerous. Elara didn't flinch. She bent down, slowly, deliberately, and with a slight theatrical flourish, picked up the second phone. She held it up for all to see, its screen still displaying the incriminating notes, a list of answers corresponding to the trivia categories. The harsh glare of the restaurant lights seemed to highlight every single word on the screen. A collective gasp rippled through the VIP section. Whispers erupted, growing in volume. Julian Thorne, who had been observing the scene with a bewildered expression, finally comprehended what was happening. His jaw dropped. Mr. Harrison looked like he'd been struck by lightning, his face turning a sickly shade of white. "These, Miss Sterling," Elara continued, her voice gaining strength, "appear to be the answers to the charity trivia challenge. Quite convenient, wouldn't you say?" Victoria lunged, her hand outstretched, attempting to snatch the phone from Elara's grasp. But Elara was quicker, stepping back, keeping the evidence just out of reach. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic whispers and the growing hum of disbelief. You little..." Victoria spluttered, her composure completely shattered. How dare you? This is an outrage. Mr. Harrison, get this insolent employee away from me. She's trying to sabotage me. This is a setup. Mr. Harrison, visibly trembling, finally found his voice. Elara, what is the meaning of this? Put that phone down immediately. His eyes darted nervously between the furious Victoria and the incriminating device in Elara's hand. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, but his loyalty clearly lay with the hand that fed him. The meaning, Mr. Harrison, Elara said, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the rising clamor, is that Miss Sterling is cheating. And I believe in fairness even if some people don't. She held the phone higher, displaying the answers for anyone who still harbored doubts. The evidence was irrefutable. Julian Thorne, finally snapping out of his shock, stood up, his face a mask of mortification. Victoria, is this true? His voice, usually calm and measured, was laced with disbelief and a hint of disgust. Victoria, cornered and exposed, erupted. It's a lie. She's lying. This is a personal vendetta. She's always hated me. She pointed a trembling finger at Elara, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and humiliation. You're fired. You hear me? Fired. You'll never work in this city again. Mr. Harrison, seeing his golden goose threatened, took a deep breath, and with a renewed sense of purpose stepped forward. Elara, you are dismissed. Immediately. Please leave the premises. Now. His voice was firm, cold, devoid of any sympathy. Elara felt a sudden lightness, an unexpected sense of liberation. The sword had fallen. She had known it would. But strangely there was no regret, only a quiet satisfaction. She had spoken her truth, exposed the lie. Fine, Elara said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. But at least everyone knows the truth now. With a final defiant glance at Victoria, whose face was contorted in a grotesque mask of fury and shame, Elara placed the second phone gently on the table, its screen still blazing with the evidence. She then untied her apron, slowly, deliberately, and placed it on the nearest chair. As she walked out of the Gilded Spoon, the hushed whispers and shocked murmurs followed her. The dramatic irony of the situation hung heavy in the air. Victoria Sterling, the epitome of success and grace, had been exposed not by a rival but by a lowly waitress. The powerful figure had been momentarily stripped of her power, her carefully constructed facade crumbling around her. Out on the street, the cool night air was a welcome contrast to the stifling heat of the restaurant. Elara took a deep breath, the taste of freedom, bitter and exhilarating, on her tongue. She was jobless, yes, and the future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope, a resurgence of a long-dormant spark. She had stood up for what was right, and that, she realized, was a victory in itself. The echo of broken dreams still lingered, but now, perhaps, a new melody was beginning to play. The firing of Elara was, predictably, a non-event in the grand scheme of the Gilded Spoon. Mr. Harrison swiftly orchestrated a damage control operation, issuing a statement about a rogue employee, and ensuring that Victoria Sterling received a profuse apology and assurances of absolute discretion. The incident, he insisted, was a misunderstanding, a regrettable overreaction on the part of the waitress. Most of the restaurant's clientele, eager to avoid any unpleasantness, were happy to accept this convenient narrative. After all, who were they to question the word of Victoria Sterling? But whispers, like tendrils of smoke, began to spread. Not within the exclusive circles of the elite, who preferred to believe the carefully crafted version of events, but among the staff of the Gilded Spoon, and then, subtly, into the city service industry grapevine. Waiters, bartenders, and even delivery drivers had heard stories, seen glimpses of the true nature of people like Victoria Sterling. They knew the casual cruelty, the disregard for those they deemed beneath them. Elara's act, while foolish in the eyes of the establishment, resonated with a quiet dignity among those who understood. Elara spent the next few days in a daze. The initial rush of defiance had given way to a crushing weight of reality. Her meager savings would barely cover another month's rent. The thought of applying for another serving job filled her with dread. The service industry in the city was a tight-knit community, and a black mark from the Gilded Spoon, especially one involving a high-profile client like Victoria Sterling, would be a scarlet letter. She tried applying for art-related jobs, but her portfolio was years out of date, and her experience was virtually non-existent beyond her personal projects. Her small apartment, once a sanctuary for her creative endeavors, now felt like a prison. The blank canvases leaned against the wall, mocking her. The unused paints sat in their tubes, their vibrant colors dulled by the dust of neglect. She considered calling her parents, but the thought of adding to their worries was unbearable. They believed in her so fiercely, and the idea of telling them she had been fired for an act of defiance, an act that had seemingly yielded no positive outcome beyond a momentary feeling of self-righteousness, felt like a betrayal of their faith. Meanwhile, the media, initially buzzing with the scandalous revelation from the Gilded Spoon, had been skillfully managed by the Sterling and Thorne families. A carefully worded press release had been issued, attributing the incident to a misguided attempt by a former employee to gain attention. Victoria, ever the manipulator, had given a tearful interview to a sympathetic society columnist, painting herself as the victim of a malicious attack. "I truly felt for that poor girl," she had wept, dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. "It's a shame she chose such a destructive path. But I forgive her, of course. My heart goes out to anyone struggling." The public, swayed by her apparent magnanimity, largely bought the narrative. Julian Thorne, however, was a different story. He had witnessed the incident firsthand. He had seen the second phone, the answers, the raw fury on Victoria's face. He had seen the quiet dignity of Elara as she walked away. The incident had cracked the perfectly polished veneer of his engagement. He began to see Victoria not as the charming, sophisticated woman he thought he was marrying, but as a manipulative, dishonest opportunist. Their conversations became strained, filled with an unspoken tension. He found himself replaying the scene in his mind, the stark contrast between Elara's unwavering honesty and Victoria's desperate lies. The cracks in their meticulously constructed union began to widen, slowly but irrevocably. One particularly bleak morning, as Elara was staring at a blank canvas, feeling utterly defeated, a soft knock came at her door. It was Mrs. Henderson, her elderly landlady, a kind woman who often left small gifts of freshly baked cookies on Elara's doorstep. Mrs. Henderson held a small, cream-colored envelope. "This came for you, dear," she said, her voice gentle. "It's not often you get mail that isn't a bill, is it?" She gave Elara a sympathetic smile. Elara took the envelope, her brow furrowed in confusion. There was no return address, and the handwriting was elegant, almost artistic. She tore it open, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside, nestled among a crisp, thick piece of paper, was a single crisp $100 bill. Her heart leaped. $100. It was more than she'd made in a good night at the Gilded Spoon. Then she unfolded the note. It was written in the same elegant script. "Courage is not the absence of fear but the triumph over it. What you did was an act of profound courage. The world needs more people like you. Sometimes justice takes an unexpected detour. Do not despair. Keep creating. A new path awaits." There was no signature, no clue as to who had sent it. Elara reread the words, her mind racing. Who could have sent this? Was it a joke? A cruel prank? But the tone was sincere, and the $100 bill was undeniably real. Keep creating. The words resonated deep within her, stirring a long-dormant hope. The message, cryptic yet powerful, felt like a lifeline thrown into a raging storm. It was a sign, a whisper in the dark, that perhaps, just perhaps, her act of defiance hadn't been in vain after all. It was the first glimmer of light in the overwhelming darkness, a hint that the tables were, indeed, beginning to turn. The anonymous note was a mystery, a puzzle Elara couldn't solve. She replayed the events of that night at the Gilded Spoon, trying to recall anyone who might have shown a flicker of understanding, anyone who might have been subtly impressed by her actions. But the faces blurred into a sea of judgmental stares and averted gazes. Yet, the note was undeniably real, and it had a profound effect. It was a validation she hadn't known she desperately needed. It was a recognition of her courage, a whisper of encouragement when she felt most alone. The $100 bill was a temporary reprieve, allowing her to buy groceries and put off the inevitable confrontation with her landlord for a few more days. More importantly, the words "keep creating" had ignited a spark. She pulled out her dusty art supplies, the colors still vibrant despite their neglect. She started sketching, tentatively at first, then with increasing fervor. The anger, the frustration, the injustice she felt, it all poured onto the canvas, transforming into raw, emotional lines and bold, defiant colors. She painted the stark contrast of Victoria's fury and her own quiet resolve, the opulence of the Gilded Spoon against the stark reality of her own struggles. It was cathartic, a way to process the storm within her. Days turned into weeks. Elara continued to receive anonymous notes, always accompanied by a $100 bill. Each note offered a new message of encouragement, a cryptic hint of support, or a philosophical musing on integrity and perseverance. True beauty lies not in what you possess but in who you are. The grandest failures often precede the greatest triumphs. Sometimes the quietest acts create the loudest echoes. The notes never revealed the sender, but they always arrived at just the right moment, a beacon of hope preventing her from succumbing to despair. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Elara, the power shift had begun, slowly, subtly, like the shifting of tectonic plates. Julian Thorne, haunted by Victoria's deception, found himself questioning everything about their relationship. The superficiality, the constant need for validation, the casual dishonesty, it all came into sharp focus. He confronted Victoria, not in a rage but with a quiet, icy certainty. He laid out his observations, his disappointment, the stark reality of what he had witnessed. Victoria, caught off guard by his unusual stoicism, tried to deflect, to charm, to manipulate, but her usual tactics failed. The foundation of their engagement, built on an illusion of perfection, crumbled. The initial whispers about Victoria's cheating incident, though largely suppressed by the media, began to resurface in unexpected ways. A few of the guests at the engagement party who had witnessed Elara's exposé began to share their accounts in hushed tones among trusted friends. The story, embellished with each retelling, started to gain traction in the less glamorous, more grounded social circles of the city. While the society pages still lauded Victoria, a subtle shift in public perception was underway. People began to remember other instances of Victoria's less than ethical behavior, small details that had previously been overlooked or dismissed. The image of the perfect heiress was beginning to crack. Then, a surprising development occurred. An online art competition, known for its commitment to raw, unadulterated talent and its anonymous judging process, announced its annual call for submissions. Elara, emboldened by the mysterious notes and the renewed passion for her art, decided to enter. She submitted her recent paintings, the ones born from her emotional turmoil, under a pseudonym, Elias. The works were raw, unconventional, infused with a powerful sense of social commentary and human emotion. She poured her heart and soul into the submissions, channeling her frustration, her resilience, and her newfound sense of purpose into every brushstroke. One afternoon, a larger envelope arrived, not through Mrs. Henderson, but directly delivered by a discreet courier service. It contained a formal invitation. Elara ripped it open, her heart pounding. It was an invitation to an exclusive art exhibition, featuring the finalists of the online competition. Her pseudonym, Elias, was prominently listed. She had been chosen. A surge of disbelief, then elation washed over her. This was it, the new path the notes had promised. The exhibition was held at a prestigious gallery known for showcasing emerging artists. Elara, nervous but excited, arrived disguised in a simple dark dress and a wide-brimmed hat, wanting to observe the reactions to her work anonymously first. Her paintings, stark and powerful, stood out among the more conventional pieces. People lingered before them, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and contemplation. As she moved through the crowd, she overheard snippets of conversation about Elias, the mysterious new artist whose work was so unflinchingly honest. A familiar trill of laughter cut through the hum of conversation. Victoria Sterling. She was there, of course, draped in an even more elaborate gown, surrounded by a gaggle of fawning admirers. Julian Thorne was conspicuously absent. Victoria was holding court near a large abstract piece, pontificating on its meaning with an air of practiced authority. "Ah, the artist Elias," she declared, her voice carrying across the room. Such raw emotion. One can almost feel the struggle, the injustice. It reminds me of the tribulations one faces when one is simply misunderstood. Elara had to suppress a wry smile. Victoria, interpreting Elara's raw emotions of injustice as her own tribulations. The irony was almost too delicious to bear. Suddenly, a woman with a kind, intelligent face, impeccably dressed, approached Elara. She had been standing near Elara's paintings for some time, her gaze thoughtful. "You know," the woman said, her voice soft but clear, "the artist Elias has truly captured something profound here. The colors, the lines, it speaks of truth, of courage in the face of adversity." She extended a hand. "My name is Evelyn Montgomery. I'm an art patron, and I've been following the anonymous notes circulating about the bravery of a young woman at the Gilded Spoon." Elara's breath hitched. Anonymous notes? Circulating? It wasn't just her. The whispers about Victoria's cheating and Elara's brave act had reached more influential ears than she could have imagined. And this woman, Evelyn Montgomery, knew. "You see," Evelyn continued, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Sometimes when those in power try to bury the truth, it finds a way to blossom in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, a quiet act of courage can set off a chain reaction. She paused, her eyes twinkling. And sometimes, the person you least expect is pulling the strings behind the scenes, ensuring justice finds its way. Elara felt a sudden jolt of realization. The notes, the $100 bills, the encouragement to keep creating, the timely invitation to the competition. It all clicked into place. Evelyn Montgomery was the unseen hand, the silent orchestrator of her unexpected fortune. The tables were turning not just for Elara but for the very concept of justice itself. The power shift was not a single dramatic event, but a series of carefully orchestrated moves by an unexpected ally, ensuring that the truth, like a persistent seed, would eventually break through the concrete. The grand finale of the art exhibition was the announcement of the competition winner. The gallery buzzed with anticipation. Elara, still in her disguise, stood at the back of the crowd, her heart a frantic drum. Victoria Sterling was front and center, a picture of confident elegance, completely oblivious to the impending earthquake. Julian Thorne was still nowhere to be seen, a subtle but significant absence. Mr. Peterson, the head curator of the gallery and a respected figure in the art world, stepped onto a small podium. He spoke of the importance of artistic integrity, of truth in expression. Elara felt a chill run down her spine. His words seemed to directly contradict everything Victoria Sterling represented. This year, Mr. Peterson announced, his voice resonating through the gallery, we had an unprecedented number of submissions and the quality was truly exceptional. But one artist stood out. One artist dared to be different, to be unflinchingly honest, to pour their raw truth onto the canvas. He paused, scanning the expectant faces. The winner of this year's Emerging Voices Award is Elias. A wave of applause erupted. Elara felt a surge of triumph, a mixture of validation and pure joy. But before she could even process it, Evelyn Montgomery, who had positioned herself discreetly near the podium, stepped forward. She looked directly at Elara, her eyes sparkling with a knowing amusement. And now, Evelyn announced, her voice carrying a quiet authority that commanded attention, for the true unveiling. Elias is not a man but a remarkable young woman. She extended a hand towards Elara. Miss Elara Vance, would you please step forward? The entire gallery seemed to hold its breath. All eyes turned to Elara. Slowly, deliberately, she removed her hat, revealing her face. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Murmurs erupted, rapidly growing into a crescendo of whispers. Victoria Sterling, who had been chatting animatedly with the senator, froze. Her eyes, wide with disbelief and then dawning horror, met Elara's. The blood drained from Victoria's face, leaving it ashen. The woman she had so easily dismissed, so publicly humiliated, was now standing on the precipice of artistic acclaim, the anonymous Elias she had just been praising. Elara Vance, Evelyn continued, her voice clear and strong, is the very waitress who, with extraordinary courage, exposed the deception of a prominent socialite during a charity event at the Gilded Spoon just a few weeks ago. The statement hung in the air, a bombshell dropping into the heart of the city's elite. Her artwork, Evelyn swept her hand towards Elara's paintings, is a direct reflection of that experience. The struggle for integrity in a world that often rewards artifice. The silence in the gallery was deafening, a thick, palpable tension. All eyes shifted from Elara to Victoria, whose carefully constructed world was crumbling before her very eyes. Victoria's face was a study in raw, unadulterated humiliation, a stark contrast to the saccharine smile she usually wore. The dramatic irony was profound. She had just praised the art of the very woman she had fired and publicly shamed. Then Julian Thorne, who had quietly entered the gallery at the last moment, walked purposefully through the stunned crowd. He stopped directly in front of Victoria, his gaze cold and unwavering. "Victoria," he said, his voice quiet but carrying immense weight in the hushed gallery. "I think it's time we officially announce the end of our engagement." Another collective gasp. The room erupted in a furious buzz of conversation. Victoria's carefully cultivated image of the perfect fiancé, the graceful socialite, shattered into a million pieces. She stammered, unable to form coherent words, her face contorted in a mixture of shock and utter defeat. Julian Thorne, seeing the truth so clearly, had finally severed ties with the illusion. The power shift was complete, not just for Elara, but for Victoria, who had lost her most valuable asset, her carefully constructed public persona and her influential fiancé. Evelyn Montgomery stepped forward again, a triumphant smile gracing her lips. "And as for the anonymous notes and financial support Elara has received," she announced, "that was a collective effort by a group of individuals who believe in integrity, in fairness, and in giving true talent a chance to shine. We saw an injustice and we chose to act. We believe in investing in character, not just status." Elara, overwhelmed with emotion, could only nod, tears welling in her eyes. The anonymous notes, the hidden hand, the unexpected ally, it was all part of a meticulously planned act of justice, a carefully orchestrated retribution. The ending was not just satisfying, it was deeply cathartic. Victoria Sterling, stripped of her facade, her engagement, and her public standing, was left exposed and humiliated. Elara Vance, the unassuming waitress, had risen from the ashes of her broken dreams, her art now a beacon of truth and resilience. The audience, witnessing this complete reversal of fortune, felt a profound sense of justice served, a validation that sometimes, the underdog truly does have their day. The aftermath of the exhibition was a whirlwind. Elara's story, now inextricably linked with her art, became a sensation. The media, no longer able to ignore the undeniable truth, clamored for interviews. Her paintings, imbued with such raw emotion and a powerful narrative, resonated deeply with the public. They were purchased by prominent collectors, featured in art magazines, and discussed in hushed tones in galleries across the city. The gilded spoon, once a symbol of her confinement, became a footnote in her inspiring rags-to-riches story. Mr. Harrison, scrambling to save face, issued a groveling public apology, inviting Elara back with promises of a promotion, which she politely but firmly declined. Victoria Sterling, on the other hand, became a pariah. Her carefully curated image of perfection was irrevocably tarnished. The whispers that had once circulated only among the service staff now became a roar of public condemnation. The engagement to Julian Thorne was irrevocably broken, and many of her other high society connections, wary of being associated with her scandal, quietly distanced themselves. She retreated from public life, her social standing in ruins, a stark reminder that even the most powerful facades can crumble when confronted with undeniable truth. The dramatic irony continued to play out, as the woman who had so effortlessly cheated her way through life now faced a reckoning for her dishonesty. Julian Thorne, freed from the illusion of his engagement, found a quiet respect for Elara. He never approached her directly, but he became a silent admirer of her work, occasionally attending her exhibitions from a distance. He had learned a profound lesson about character and authenticity, a lesson he would carry with him. Evelyn Montgomery became a mentor to Elara, guiding her through the complexities of the art world, providing invaluable advice and unwavering support. Their bond, forged in a shared commitment to truth and integrity, deepened with each passing day. Evelyn revealed that she too had once faced a similar injustice in her own career, dismissed and underestimated by powerful figures. She saw in Elara a kindred spirit, a chance to right a past wrong by empowering a new generation. Elara's art continued to evolve, branching out beyond her initial experiences. She used her platform to champion causes of social justice, to highlight the struggles of the marginalized, and to celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Her work became a voice for the voiceless, a canvas for empathy and understanding. She even established a scholarship fund for aspiring artists from underprivileged backgrounds, ensuring that others wouldn't have to sacrifice their dreams as she almost had. One day years later, Elara stood in her own spacious studio, a light-filled sanctuary filled with canvases both finished and in progress. Her hands, once accustomed to carrying trays, now deftly wielded brushes, bringing vibrant stories to life. She thought back to that night at the Gilded Spoon, to the fear, the anger, the defiance. She thought of the mysterious notes, the lifeline thrown by an unseen hand. She thought of the powerful life lesson she had learned, a lesson etched onto the very fabric of her being. True power does not come from wealth or status, but from integrity, courage, and the unwavering belief in what is right. And sometimes, the quietest acts of defiance can set off the loudest echoes, leading to an unexpected and deeply satisfying justice. The world had seen a waitress stop a rich girl from cheating, get fired, and then receive a mysterious note. But it had also witnessed something far greater, the turning of the tables, the triumph of truth, and the enduring power of an underdog spirit. The canvas of Elara's life, once muted by despair, was now vibrant with purpose, a masterpiece born from an act of profound courage. And as she looked out at the bustling city, she knew her story, a testament to the unexpected paths justice can take, was just beginning to unfold. Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you'll be the first to know what happens next. And as always, share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat.